Hey everyone, my name is Isaiah Mosteller with Academic Expeditions,
My name is Bob Burnett, also with Academic Expeditions.
we're going to talk to you and to each other about a tour that we're conducting around the inauguration, but the focus is not so much on the inauguration event itself, but on the role of the presidency, how it's involved, and how the different personalities and people through history have sort of shaped that office. And this tour is, though we work with school groups, it is for students, but we're really focusing this on families in particular. So you may register as a family of parents and students and families from not just one school, but around the country. So we're going to talk a little bit about this tour, give an introduction of kind of what to expect from it and why we are sort of excited about it. Because we've both worked inaugurations before with other tour companies, and when you talk to tour guides in DC and they say, hey, you know, work inauguration, what's the usual response?
It's usually like, oh, really? I have to do that because it's crowded, it's cold, it's all these things, and you know, not always the most fun part for being a guide.
Yeah, so I can reciprocate that. You know, it's work, but it's often a tour that a lot of guys try to avoid. But that's not the case here, and that's why we want to talk to you about it. Why this is a little different, and why the focus is different. And this, first off, while it is the inauguration and it's around those dates, the trip itself is going to be 5 nights, 6 days, overlapping with inauguration, but to be a tour to learn about the presidency, because of course DC is right next to Virginia, and so many of our early presidents, out of our first 5 presidents, there 4 of them were from Virginia, and each of those were 2-term presidents, and so we have a lot of years and influence from Washington, Jefferson, Madison, Monroe. Virginia really helped shape the presidency in its early days, and then DC itself covers all geography, all time periods through its memorials. And so not just looking at the event of the inauguration, but the presidency and how it's been shaped by these people.
And sort of our idea with the inauguration is to also highlight the path to the presidency, stories that would highlight that, and talk about some of the more compelling things behind the scenes of some of these presidencies, and give you a perspective of the amazing stuff that's happened leading up to inauguration. So there's a lot more than meets the eye. Isaiah and I were talking earlier about, you know, some of the news and the intensity surrounding elections, and we want to give you some stories talking about that's absolutely nothing new, that former elections like the election of 1800 with Jefferson and Adams, there was definitely some heated discussions and things happening in that time too that would even make us today even blush for what they called each other.
Yeah, that's one thing I've learned is, you know, I've been guiding now for 20 years, you're close to the same, and of course we've learned the stories of those famous presidents whose memorials are in DC, but we've sort of taken a love of learning about more of the lesser known presidents. Some of them are obscure, and in learning those, it's really made me appreciate the complexity of the times, of that even some presidents are forgettable now. At their time, there was hot debates about who's right and who's wrong, and that's pretty much, divisiveness has kind of been a part of every election. It's not just now. So learning that history actually kind of comforts us to learn that if you're annoyed by politics, it's really nothing new. It's kind of part of our heritage, actually. But this tour, we're not going to focus on that divisiveness. We're not really going to, or the current, because we're filming this video at a time we don't know who's going to win the election. So we're not focusing on come to the inauguration because you like or don't like who won. This is more to come to gain an understanding of the role of the presidency, and the inauguration, whether you like who won or not, it is a special event to see how power is transferred through the decree of the people versus through a military overthrow or through inheritance.
Right, and we want to make sure that the tour is open to anyone from any political ideology, that it's not so much focused on who just won the presidency and who's being sworn in. It's more about the historical element of the inauguration itself and taking part in a time-honored tradition in our country. And that's where we're coming from, presenting the history that leads up to that.
Yeah, and another sort of advantage of this approach of, say, the Virginia presidents is we don't know what it's going to be like in January with pandemic concerns, but these sites are more rural. When you go to Mount Vernon, Monticello, Williamsburg in Virginia, they're rural, they're not crowded this time of the year, so it's a great time to see these sites and visit them and not feel like you're in a crowded tour. And we're being deliberate in how we manage that when we are in places like DC where it's more crowded and you can't really avoid the crowds, to help orientate you and give you the freedom as a family to sort of choose your own areas of where you want to spend your time and your own comfort level.
The trip is going to be billed as a land-only trip, in which we're allowing families to travel anywhere in the United States that wants to come and take part in this, and make reservations to get for your own flights to travel to Washington. And even if you live within a drivable area, if that's an option for you, that's fine. And of course, Isaiah and I are going to be the team on this, and we of course would be available for any questions and outreach that you may have about your own transportation. But we feel like with the virus, and because of opening it up to the whole country for any family to come, we just want to make it easier for you to be able to get here in your own comfort level with your family, and do it in the way you feel the safest by doing it.
Yeah, and part of that is as a family too. Unlike our other student trips where a student signs up and they room with other students, the lodging will be as families. So if you're a parent and a child, you would share a room together. Up to a family of 4 could take one room, or if it's bigger than that, it could be in other rooms. Unless, of course, you know certain people you want to room with, we can make those accommodations, but we won't be just randomly matching people up and to share rooms with people they're not related to or don't know.
So obviously with different regions of the country and wherever you're traveling from, arrival times would be different. So Isaiah and I would, of course, have a location at the hotel set for families to arrive to.
And the hotel's right by the National Mall and the museums for the arrival day.
And we're going to be there welcoming you as you get there, and we'll be in contact, of course, with you throughout the day. And depending on what time you arrive, the Smithsonian's, like we mentioned, will be across from the hotel. You have a free day to explore that, and we're going to kind of leave that first day open-ended for travel day, have a dinner, have a meet and greet sort of that evening, and then the following day is when our actual tour will start, which from that moment will be us on a bus and traveling to different locations, starting in Virginia first.
Yeah, and if, for example, you're coming from California, then you might just want to get that red eye the night before, show up in the morning and have all day to explore on your own, using the hotel as a base to go check out some of the things. We will be guiding things in DC, like to the memorials to tell those stories, but more of the kind of museum and government building time, that's really up to you, kind of depending on your flight arrangements or travel arrangements, kind of to create that time. We're not trying to dictate that to you.
Right, and the memorial time that we have, we should make clear that the memorials that we see are all outside, so that still falls in line with avoiding crowded places indoors and socially distancing. And really, the entire trip leading up to the inauguration will be with that in mind, of us going to places that are outside and away from crowds. And with the inauguration day, we sort of have an idea there to leave it a bit more open-ended. We kind of joked earlier about how it's not a tour guide's dream to be at the inauguration. That's because it is difficult to guide 50, 60, 200 people into the National Mall, get them the place they all want to stand, and all that. So we're going to approach it from a different perspective, where we're going to leave it up to you to determine where you want to stand. If you want to be as close as you can to the Capitol building, standing on the National Mall in the crowds, that is fine. And whatever regulations that are being advertised and are being recommended to do, we're going to follow and be safe and make sure that you have the best information. If you want to be further back, which is usually at the Washington Monument, we of course are going to guide you how to get there and to watch safely from a distance. And we should note that when you're on the National Mall during the inauguration, mostly what you're seeing is a teleprompter screen watching the inauguration play out. It's still, you know, a good half a mile to a mile to the Capitol where the inauguration is happening, but being a part of the history is really the exciting part. And if you as a family want to write your congressman or woman and see if you can get tickets to get closer to the actual presidential inauguration, that's more than fine, and we'll do whatever we can to accommodate and give you the information to get to where you want to be. So we found as guides, the day of the inauguration is best to just give people an overview where to go anyway and say meet us back here at a certain time, because you know, it's possible that we're going to see crowds of 500,000 people. It's possible. We don't know exactly what the crowds will look like or where we'll be at that time, but we're going to use that day to leave it a little bit more open-ended to your comfort level and guide you the best places to be on the mall.
So I hope you'll join us, and we look forward to telling you those stories. If you'd like to register for this trip or get more information, I'm going to put a little link here for you to go and investigate, read a little bit more, and let us know if you have any questions. But we hope that you'll travel with us, and we'll get to show you some of the things we often don't even get to highlight and see on some of our regular tours that only focus on little tidbits.
So thanks again, guys. Hope you enjoyed it. We hope to see you in 2021.
Yep.
For the inauguration. Take care.
Yep. Bye-bye.